Recorded live on the turf at Mad Lab Training Studio in Eldersburg, Maryland. This is the Time to Win podcast with Alex and Dan. Now let's get this podcast started.
Hey Dan, good to see you today. How you doing?
Great, Alex.
Yeah.
Good to see you too.
Another day at the beautiful Mad Lab Studios.
It really is. Best day ever, they say.
Live from the turf, all right? So, speaking of turf, have you ever taken a high-speed wipeout on the turf?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what happens, right?
You get a lot of turf burn. You know what? You get some souvenirs.
Okay, souvenirs, right? So I've been out hiking recently, right? And I've been taking the Warhound out to hike, and I've been
Warhound.
The Warhound, and I've been hiking with my son yesterday. And it's the weirdest thing, right? Like, because I come back and I'm all banged up. I'm cut up. I've got like these scratches all over my body. Sometimes there's blood spots on my shirt. I don't even know where this stuff comes from.
Badgers.
Maybe.
Could be.
But, the weirdest thing is, have you ever had one of these things where you wake up in the morning and you've got, a bruise and you don't know how it got there? Right?
That was my whole college career.
Okay, good enough, right? And, you don't even, I don't party like I was in college. I don't do that anymore. I did back in college. But, but I still wake up with these odd bruises. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know.
I know. Maybe there's ghosts. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. But it's the weirdest thing, right?
You're always working hard, Alex. Could be anything.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just not paying attention, right? Story of my life. So Dan, that's got nothing to do with what I wanted to talk about today, okay? But it was just an intro. It was a funny thought I had, and, I'm going to be out in the woods later today knocking around and doing stuff. And
hopefully you keep all your bandages.
Well, we'll see. But what I wanted to talk about today was starting over, okay? Now, I know that when we talk about, how do you want to do the podcast, we've always said, hey, Alex, why don't you throw something out there cold, and we'll go from there. So what I want to talk about today is starting over, right?
Okay.
And actually, you figure into this story. You're one of the characters in my starting over story, and it starts out in maybe September or October of last year, when Brenda wheeled me in a wheelchair and said, Dan, this is Alex, my husband. He can't even walk, right? And I was at one point I don't know. I always fancied myself as something an amateur athlete, somebody that, brought a fair amount of strength and experience to the table. But
for sure,
I came in here and I could barely walk, right? And you've seen me a couple of times where I've come in, full of ambition, but I can barely walk. And
you say, Dan, I'm banged up today.
Yeah, and you look at me and you say, yeah, you are. Hit the table, Alex. We're not lifting today. We're gonna work on your joints a little bit. But Dan, what is that like to start over? Have you ever had an episode in your life where you thought you were good and then all of a sudden you weren't?
Yeah, actually, that's happened to me many times in my life from two major different aspects. One would be from physically, right? So I've had 2 ACL tears. The first one being the worst mentally for me,
right,
because I had no idea what would happen. I had doctors tell me, and I think I was 26. I was playing basketball.
Right.
I did a jump cut on a fast break, something I've done a million times, and my knee just popped. And I went down. I immediately knew something terrible happened.
Right.
And I was more disappointed than anything else. And then the doctor was like, "Oh, it's your ACL. You got to get surgery." I've never had surgery like that before,
right.
So I was kind of freaked out. And then the doctors were like, "Well, you won't be able to play contact sports again," because I was always a rugby player, and then I like to fight and wrestle and do all sorts of stuff. And so I was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "I'm gonna have to change my entire life."
Yeah.
Which I didn't end up having to do.
Right.
But I did have to go through intense therapy. And I had to go in the weight room and be instead of lifting whatever amount, 100 pounds, I had to start with maybe you're holding a 10-pound weight doing this.
Yeah.
Maybe you're barely holding on while you're trying to do this simple single leg movement. Right. And so I've had to come back from that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, what does that feel like in your head though? I get
embarrassing.
it from yeah.
Is what is the biggest. That's what I remember the most, because I remember doing stuff, and I feel the human condition, you always think that everybody's paying attention to whatever you're doing, which is not the case, right?
Yeah, right. I am the main character in everybody else's life.
But it's in your head, and I just remember sitting there and be wanting to tell everybody what happened and explain where I was starting from, so that no one would look at me and be like, "Oh man, that guy's barely doing this
Yeah.
or whatever. Or like when I went back to start playing sports, you know, you don't cut as well because you're still thinking about it. You end up you actually ended up better off than I was before.
Right.
But at first, like everything you're more careful than you were.
Yeah.
You haven't been like first time back to basketball. If you're not playing basketball, it's a very technical sport. So your shooting is terrible, and you're like, I don't usually shoot like this. Like it's just embarrassing. It's tough.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're not willing to go through that, you're really doing a disservice to yourself because everybody's gonna have to start over in some way at some point. And then as long as you go into it and you have a goal and you just work towards that goal, I think that you end up a lot of times better for it.
Okay. So last podcast, Dan, we talked a little bit about goals and setting like gigantic goals and like unreasonable goals. And you and I have talked about like the unreasonableness of our ambitions and like maybe that gets us in trouble. I don't know, but
True.
like but what about babies? What about little kids? Right? Like they don't seem to be the least bit embarrassed about like not knowing how to walk. Right? They just get up and one day they practice and then one day they start walking, right? But they never seem to be like, I don't know, maybe they're mad a little bit when they can't get what they want. But you look at adults that are trying to start over and it's just misery, it's suffering, and a lot of people hang it up. But
yeah, they do.
Little kids don't do that. What's the difference?
So my guess would be it would have to do with ego first, right?
Okay.
And then but then the question would be, is ego something that is put into you through society and through your environment, or is that something that is like that just like grows in a normal adult person in the first place, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah.
So I'm sure Freud would have something to say about it. I don't know what he would say because
I don't know.
I really studied a ton of them.
Wow, man, you're going deep already. This is great.
I know. Well, you started it, Alex.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Like, everybody, like you said, Dan, everybody has to start over again at something, and
100%.
More often than not, lots of things, right? Like, people go through like career changes, or people go through relationship changes, or people go through like, I don't know, whatever, the monetary changes, the situation changes, and you find yourself back at square one, and that's just crushing for adults sometimes.
For sure.
But you still have to do it, right? And nobody teaches. We talked about this last podcast too.
Well,
nobody teaches you how to start over.
No one does, and that's a problem. But then it's also a problem if you choose not to start over.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody that's been in a terrible relationship, I've done that before too.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to be like, do you want to try to trust and like do whatever again?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Do I want to set myself up with a chance that this could happen again?
Right.
Same thing with the ACL. Do I want to play a sport where that could happen again and I have to go through all this stuff again?
Yeah.
But if you don't choose that, I feel like you're doing a giant disservice to yourself.
Right.
One, in learning through adversity, which I think is really understated all the time.
Yeah.
And then two, in like just doing stuff that you're going to enjoy. And get to those unreasonable goals.
Right. So, like Dan, right now I'm trying to do something new. I'm trying to do something new in my life, right? Big surprise, right? Like you couldn't have seen that one coming. But like I'm trying to learn French, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it's really funny because right now I'm like a baby. I don't even suck at French. I just don't have any French at all, right?
It's like no concept of how to do it.
Yeah, like my goal right now is to just get to the point where I suck at French, okay? But I don't. I don't even have that. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it can't be that hard, right? Like speaking Chinese, it can't be that hard, right? Because like 2 billion people have already cracked the code on that one. Right?
That's true, yeah.
And you go over to China and you bring a couple words of the local language and you throw out a couple of Wai Gao Chaos or you throw out a couple of Dai Jia Hao and all of a sudden people are like, the doors are opened, and it's great. But starting over, like starting from zero, like you have to do it, and it's really, really hard. Like I said, I walked into Mad Lab, I couldn't really walk. I was having a lot of trouble. You put me through my paces. At one time, once in my life, I had a 400-pound squat. I had it for reps. I walked in here. I could not do a body weight single leg squat at all, right? And I guess I still can't, actually. That's one of the things we're working on. But,
True.
But man, I put a year into it. I feel so much better. But yeah, I had to start from zero. I had to start over like I was a baby again. And I think that's super hard for adults. But yeah, I guess if we were to say anything to the listeners today, I think what I'd probably say is, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to suck. It's okay to start over again. And yeah, it's going to be hard, but it's going to get better. And tomorrow, it's going to suck less. And that's a hard thing to internalize, I think, Dan, that, yeah, today it sucks, tomorrow it's going to suck less. But if you just keep after it, it's going to be a little bit better every day.
I think that's a really great point that a lot of people forget.
Yeah.
Is that every day it is going to suck a little bit less.
Right.
And if
right.
you tell yourself that and you just embrace it, then I think that you're in a much better space.
Yeah.
Right? And I also think that as a human being in society, I think needs to push more like that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's another reason that people don't want to be in a different space, because society is like, you need to get into a certain role,
right,
and you need to be respected.
Yeah.
And this is what you are.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not, but it's almost never the case, right?
Right.
You usually have to like figure out your role, and you have to be in a bunch of different things. And sometimes you are in a certain role, and then you have to restart at a different role,
mm-hmm,
right? Whether it's like job related, or where you are physically, and like it's health related, or it's like a relationship, right? You're gonna have to start over those things. And
right.
I think that one of the things that should be taught to us and should be taught by more parents, and I think even in like formal schooling, is, are you comfortable right now? How can you figure out ways to make yourself uncomfortable?
Yeah.
How can you be fine with that?
Right.
And then how can you get better from that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I don't know whether Jocko said this or whether it was somebody else, but I remember this line: "Comfort is overrated." Right?
It sounds like a Jocko thing.
It does. Yeah.
Or like a David Goggins or something.
Yeah, right. So while we're on that, should we do a quick endorsement?
Oh, I think we should.
Yeah. So
let's enjoy. We're enjoying some Jocko Goes. I'll see you have yours over there.
I got a Jocko right here. Yeah.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite flavor too. I like the orange a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't drink energy drinks at all, Alex. This is the only energy drink that I'll drink because it doesn't have any fake sugars in there. There's no sucralose or anything like that.
Right.
It also has a good influx of vitamins. It doesn't have a ton of caffeine.
Yeah.
I'm not putting 300 milligrams of caffeine in here. It's 90, so it's less than a cup of coffee. Gives you a bit of, gives you a little bit of jolt.
Right.
Gets you to go. Plus, I love Jocko's message.
Yeah.
And I know Jocko will sponsor us shortly. Have we talked to him? No. Is this an unreasonable goal? Maybe.
No.
But I believe in it.
Yeah, it may be unreasonable, but you know what? If we don't say things like, "Hey, Jocko, I know you're out there, you're listening right now. We want you here on the set, on the turf here at Mad Lab, and we look forward to you joining us sometime. Love to hear what you have to say. Want to hear it coming right out of the studio here. Okay, Jocko, it's up to you
and
now,
we're gonna keep drinking your drinks. The protein's good too, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the goal is to suck less, right? The goal, yeah, and you're right, Dan. Like, society sets us up like you got to be awesome all the time. You just have to be awesome, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about your goal last podcast. I just want to be great. Maybe it wasn't last podcast. Maybe that was an offline conversation.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Might have been when we were practicing for podcasting. We practice for you guys.
Yeah. So you said I want to be great, right? But you didn't say I'm great now. Right? You said, I want to be great.
Did not say that, yeah.
And I think that's a difference, right? You're willing to put the time in, and you're willing to look at your imperfections and to address them and be realistic about that and come up with a plan to fix them or come up with a plan to make them better, right? Dan, you're an unusual guy. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. But
Many people have told me that, for better or for worse.
But you're unusual in that you're not afraid to suck and you're not afraid to work. All right, and those two things, right? Like, so, that you talked about the ego, right? So that combination of like work ethic plus ego suppression, I think that's a formula, right? I think that's a formula that's worth something. Like ego suppression plus superior work ethic equals like great, or awesome or something like that, right? But we get to the point where we're adults, right? And we're not like it's hard. Like growing up is one of the hardest things in the world, right? And when we're grown up,
you're not kidding.
I know, right?
I just started to think of the weight of that statement.
Don't overthink that one, right?
Jeez, you're not kidding.
But we invest all this effort into growing up, right? And we spend decades doing it, right? And then when we get there, we're expected to stay there, right? And And we are not willing to like give that up, right? All of that work that we did, right? And then we have to do the hardest job ever, which is pay your mortgage, raise your kids, stay cool with your partner, whatever. And you have to do that day after day after day for decades, right? And you have to, it's just brutally hard work, right?
It is, yeah.
And I think people get to the point where they're like, I do not want to go through any of that again. I have put all this effort into it. I just want to maintain the status quo. And okay, so Dan, I'm going to pitch another crazy idea out there. And listeners, if take down notes, this is going to be on the test, right?
Yeah, take note.
Right? The hardest thing ever is to just give it up, right? To walk away from it. To say, okay, I did that job. I raised my family. I'm good with that. Now I want to learn French, or I want to get a 400-pound squat, or I want to run for office, or something. I want to start a company. I don't know.
Yeah.
What, right. But I think that may be the hardest thing anybody's ever going to do in their life, right?
Because of the fear of failure.
Yeah. And how many kids have you worked with that did not get, and when I say kid, I mean any of your customers, right? The kids are everybody that's not here with us right now on the set,
right. Yeah, I got you.
So how many kids have you worked with, Dan, that were afraid of success? They were afraid of failing, right? And so they were capable of success, but they were so afraid of failing that they weren't even willing to put their effort into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really common. That's common, actually. Yeah. So.
And it's scary to
because I was one of those kids too.
Yeah.
Actually, because I remember stuff that I did when I was little, especially like playing sports and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just remember not taking opportunities at certain things because I was like, well, I won't be good at that anyway.
Yeah.
Which is just such an unfortunate way for youth to think.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, there was me, right? So I'm the opposite. I was the guy that was always at the bottom of the heap because he was always trying new things and he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid to fail, and he often did. This kid named Alex, 60 years ago, right?
I've heard of him.
But he was never afraid to fail, right? And he was always getting his teeth kicked in, right? He was always getting knocked down. And this kid had nothing going for him, right? He had red hair, he was fat, he had glasses, he had zits all over his face, he had braces on his teeth. I mean, I was like the perfect storm of misfortune, right? I was like, how's this kid? And maybe that fueled me. I don't know. Maybe that like drove, that urge to tell everyone to just get in the back because I'm going on my own, right? We talked about that last week.
Yeah, we
right?
did.
You got to go out there and you got to suffer a little bit and you got to do it on your own. But how do we teach kids that it's okay to try, it's okay to fail, it's okay if you're not awesome today, you might suck less tomorrow, right? But we don't teach those things, right?
How would you teach that? Would you be like, so for example, in school, this is just like I'm just spitballing here, but. Let's say you have somebody that are in fourth grade, right, and so they have to take they're taking English and math and like whatever else. I don't even know what they call English right now. I can't remember what Jack says it is.
Wow,
my son. But
they don't even call it English anymore.
No, it's called like I think English is part of it, but it's like some like abbreviation that I don't remember.
Right.
And then he's always like, this is it. And it took me like almost like a year to figure out what he was talking about, which was probably not good. And I was like, oh, I'm glad that he's doing whatever subject. But what happens if it's like, all right, you have two subjects that you have to change every quarter, right? And they're wildly different. And I know that kids get electives, but it's like you must choose to do this, and then with the goal to be able to do this at some point. And then it should be not so much graded on what your success rate is. It should be graded on what your effort is put into it somehow. And I don't even know how you would do all this stuff, but it's like, can you do something brand new? And then can you like put effort into it and not be afraid to fail at it miserably?
Right.
Whether that's like,
Dan, we don't reward effort, do we? Like it when you see it. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to objectify it. Maybe it's hard to assign a letter grade or a number grade to it. But you know it when you see it, right?
Yeah.
You know the kid that's trying his hardest, or the kid that's trying their hardest, right? But we don't reward effort. We only reward results, right? And that's maybe an unfortunate statement, right? Like you can get results, but
it's short-sighted.
Yeah.
Because it's just like if you have a company, right, and you're trying to make it more profitable, and they're like, what is usually the biggest, like the biggest strain on a company from a economic standpoint is usually like overhead and personnel.
Right.
Right. And then they're as like, oh, simple. To be more profitable, we'll just cut personnel.
Yeah.
And then they cut personnel, and there's no plan after that.
Right.
And now they're immediately more profitable, but in the long term, they start to suffer.
Right. So I've worked for a company that actually had a really good vision once. They had a really good vision.
Only once?
No, they had a really good vision, and once I worked for them.
Yes, right.
This English stuff's really complicated.
It's tough. Maybe we should have taken it, you know?
I don't even think it's called
You're
English
just skipping
anymore.
right to French.
Yeah. But I worked for this company that, and you know, it was a great company. I'm not going to name them here on
That's
camera,
fair.
but they're still out there. And one of the great things about working for this company was that I was sitting with the CEO and, you know, some of the, you know, 50 of the other top leaders in the company, and we were talking about our competition. And the CEO said to us, we do not aspire to be as big as this competitor of ours. We're not going to do it. It's not worth our time. It's not worth our attention or our money. We're not going to do it. What we are going to do is we're going to try and be the very best at what we do. And people will come to us. We want to be in a position of not having to grovel for business. We want to be in a position of turning away business because we are so good at what we do, right? And you know, I thought that was a revolutionary statement when the CEO
That's
said
hard to
this.
argue that, yeah. You
know, I remember reading in somebody had a motivational slogan in their cubicle in the workplace, and it said, "Growth for growth's sake is the ideology of the cancer cell," right? And so, growth as a goal.
Who said that? Is an interesting.
I mean, somebody said that.
I'm
I
sure.
don't know. I don't know who the attribution
Probably
was. But
slightly more famous than us, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but
Slightly.
everyone's going to remember us, and nobody remembers who said that. So I don't know.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah, but you know, like we got to think very carefully about our goals, right? And good goals drive all manner of bad behavior, right? Like, I want to be bigger, therefore I'm going to start taking steroids. Right? I mean, that's a crazy example, but you know, we used to see it in the workplace. Like, good goals would drive bad behavior all the time, and people would do anything to like game the metrics or to hit the numbers.
For sure.
Yeah, and then bury the evidence, right? And you know, and then you know, in a conservative or less progressive organization, that person would be applauded for, you know, hitting the numbers or achieving the goals, right? Nobody cared how they got there. You know, I used to tell the kids at work, you know, one of your goals is to get to hit the numbers that I set out for you, but you also have to do it with less than 0 body count, right? And yeah, there's lots of people who never have a body count metric built into their professional goals, right?
I've never heard of that.
Just get it done, right? And I don't care what the body count is. So I used to throw this twist on it and say, you know, the body count actually has to be not 0, but less than 0. You have to be a person that's not just going to get it done, but you have to bring people along with you, right?
That's smart.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was smart. I may be lucky in my case, you know. but yeah, we used to say, right, just bring people with you, right? You cannot leave a body count because, you know, body count is great for short-term results, right?
For sure.
But body count is awful for sustainability, right? Like you said, you know, consider the company where, you know, we're gonna save margin by lopping off headcount, and then all of a sudden, who's doing the work, right?
Right.
Yeah, we didn't actually have.
Also, what'd you do to morale of the people that are there? There's so many factors that go into it.
Then all of a sudden, everyone's walking out the door, and your company's you know, driving off the cliff, and yeah, it's awful. But you know, you know, what got us into this conversation though was like teaching kids to try and teaching kids to fail.
For sure.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but one of my colleagues used to work at General Electric, and he said one of the things they used to do was they would lavishly reward giant failures, right? People that dared greatly and couldn't do it. Like, you know, hey
man,
Dan,
that's what I should have worked for them.
Yeah, I know, right? But I mean, you know, you know, okay, so that's an interesting story. I don't know if it's true or not, but you know, the person that simply maintained the business was not considered to be a winner. You know, the person that just came in and, you know, like took good care, good custody of like a business division or something, right? It's like, okay, thanks for that, but what did you do to change the world? right? What did you do to like secure our position in, I don't know, gas turbines or nuclear energy or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And to try and dare greatly, like to try and go to the moon and not get there, right? That's heroic, right? And I don't know if heroics is a great business strategy. Counting on miracles is a terrible business strategy. But
It's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
but GE apparently found a way to reward effort, right? And daring and boldness, and those are great attributes, I think, for anybody that wants to go anywhere in this world, right?
So that's interesting. So, one, what you just said with, like, kind of maintaining the status quo,
Right.
and then the other, what you said for growth's sake,
Yeah.
right? So, both are almost there's like a line in between the two.
Yeah.
I feel like, because I'll tell you a story of when I was in my professional career where I was doing growth for growth's sake, right? I was working at a gym in Frederick. I was living in Frederick. My son's mom lived in Frederick. So like everything I did was in Frederick. Like it was easy to pick him up to go places. I could pick him up from his little school too. Yeah. Everything was within like 10 minutes. I played rugby there. So I was playing for a men's team. I got to know a ton of people in Frederick. My gym was really cool. I got paid well, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Right? I go to a conference. A company buys our company, so they buy it, and they bring us down to a conference in Florida. So we're all excited about it because they pay for everything. Go down there, and I'm kind of feeling it, and I'm like, man, I feel like I could do all sorts of stuff with this company.
Right.
How do I grow? Like, how do I become a vice president? How do I become whatever? And I looked at it, and I was like, maybe the answer is not necessarily a giant leap move right now, because there's people ahead of me that are young. So I was like, maybe I just need to be the best at my position.
Right.
And I knew there was an opening at the biggest gym in McLean, Virginia,
Right.
Which is an affluent area, and that was like the headquarters of it. So I went up to one of the vice presidents, and I was like, hey, what would it make sense for my career to like move to a bigger gym?
Right.
And he was like, I never really thought of it. Where would you go? And I was like, McLean. And he was like, that's our biggest gym. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah. And he's like, all right, let me talk to some people. And he talked to the senior vice president, and that guy came over. I was like, Dan, I'd be very comfortable with you there. And I was like, awesome.
Okay.
So it sounds great, right? So all of that sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds great so far. Where do I sign up?
So then I go down there, and I get paid almost twice as much.
Yeah.
So now I'm making a lot of money. I am doing the most heinous commute down 270,
Yeah.
which you can get down from, I lived in Frederick, from Frederick to McLean, and anywhere from 35 minutes to never.
Yeah.
So like I remember one time it snowed, and I looked on Google Maps like how long it would be, and it was just, I've never seen this before, and it was just 2 dashes. And everything was stopped. Like everything was stopped. You couldn't get on 270. Like you couldn't get off of it. It was just, I was like, oh, sweet. I just will never make it down there.
Right, and then you get a call from the SVP that says, Dan, where are you?
So it was just, and then there's like a whole nightmare corporate environment because they were turning over people at the top. And so there was like a lot of pressure from them. And what I'm saying is at that time, I looked at it and I was like, I wish I would not have done that because I was so happy where I was. And maybe there's another way to grow. But I didn't grow the right way. It wasn't like, I want to change the world. It was, and I want to make this better and make better. It was like, I want to be higher up.
Yeah.
And that's it. That was my only thought. I want to make more money and be higher up. And then I was miserable. I was hard to see Jack. I had to go down there, and then I had to come back up, and then I would spend like 6 hours sometimes a day driving, which was crazy because it's not even that far. There was just so much traffic. So then I ended up leaving that job. I had 2 choices after that. So I had a choice to be a director at a bigger gym. There's a gym called Equinox. Mm-hmm. It's like the nicest gym that in like almost like in any of the areas.
Right.
Like really high dollar. They offered me a lot of money to go there, more than I was already making. To be a director. All of the people were super excited I was there, like I was going to be there. I got hired there. I feel really bad for this. I'm sorry Equinox for doing this, but I had to make family decisions. And then a gym in Frederick offered for me to be a consultant, which I had never done.
Right.
At this, it was a very big facility, but not nearly as big as Equinox, and there was like no clients there. So I would have to start from nothing. They had no way of driving anything there, so it was kind of scary because I wasn't even sure I could do it.
Right.
And then it was like $40,000 or $50,000 less a year to do it.
Right.
So it was like huge pay cut, and I decided to do that because I wanted to start something, do something I've never done before,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be near Jack.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best career decisions I've ever made.
So you started from zero. You went back to go.
Yeah.
Right. You collected your $200, and did it suck? I mean, like, was it hard?
It was very hard.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it was very difficult.
I hear somebody banging around the background. Is somebody getting
Somebody's
down
battle
with it?
roping hard. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Julian's getting after it. She always gets after it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wolf Dog's hanging out in the background too. Feeling better than the last time that we did this, so that's
man.
good.
Yeah,
so
if you guys weren't watching, last episode, Wolf Dog wandered into the kind of the background here and then threw up all over the turf.
Yep.
It was
and,
awesome.
And then one of our clients, Ryan, shout out to Ryan Brown, spilled an ungodly amount of water off one of those wooden boxes.
That's right,
It was like a
yeah.
tidal wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here comes Wolf Dog.
Yeah, man, I
Upstairs.
love the lab.
But it was tough. It was very difficult. But also, like, while I was doing it, it was fun.
Right.
You know, as I like creating something new. And at first, we would do stuff like I would have somebody come in and I was embarrassed there was no one in the gym.
Yeah.
So I would talk to somebody, and like we had a way of social media bringing people in. I would like meet people at networking events. I'd invite them in for an assessment, and then I would have my friends come in and pretend they were members of the gym and just work
Wow.
out, so that it wasn't like a completely empty gym to intimidate the people.
That's pretty awesome.
And then we started to get more people, and we went from like, I mean, it was like I think they were doing, it was probably like 10 or 15 clients, and we got to we had a whole soccer organization, so we had over 100 clients in like 6 months.
Yeah. Well,
So-
that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah, it was cool.
there's no playbook that says, oh, yeah, and if you get to this point, like step 32,
Yeah.
bring all your friends in to work out so it looks like the gym is full of people. Right? It's
right.
not in the playbook.
No,
right?
you just gotta. I mean, you're just guessing stuff. You know,
you
you're
gotta
just
figure it
trying
out.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And figuring it out is I think it's super important. Right?
Super important.
Yeah. And they don't teach that in school either. But yeah,
No, because they try to give you a playlist, and they're just like, you're gonna go from this to this to this, and it's all gonna be great. And then you're gonna get this stuff because you did this in this order.
Yeah.
And that never happens.
it never happens, right? And so, kids, if you're taking notes, that doesn't happen, right?
Take
that
note.
playbook that says do all these steps and you'll be rich and wealthy someday. No, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of like sort of setbacks and nonlinear branch points and stuff. It's not an easy thing. It's not the playbook.
So this brings me to something else, because I feel like one of the things that I like to say is life is how you navigate the gray area.
Okay.
Right? And so I think that many people, and you're also taught this in school,
Yeah.
is like everything seems to be like on one side of the line or whatever, like black and whited or
Yeah,
whatever, right?
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, oh, this is this way and this is this way. Or this is right, this is wrong. But life is never like that. It's always going to be, well, there's some exceptions here. This is usually the right way to go, but if this and this happens, then who knows what will happen? And then are you able to operate that gray area? I mean, you even see it in our politics. People are like a fanatic of one side or a fanatic of another, and they're like,
Right.
if this happens, which is not that simple.
Right.
You know, there's all sorts of things that go on that's, you know, you could have politicians that are bad on this side or good on this side or like good leaders here or whatever.
Well,
and so can you navigate that gray area?
Right. And Dan, like in your own life, in your own experience, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do you find that the gray area is like 90% of life, or do you find that 90% is black and white and the gray area is like 10%? Like what do you think?
I guess that's tough. I would say that probably over 90% of your complicated decisions every day, like your complex decisions, are in the gray area.
Yeah,
But you might have a bunch of things that you don't really think about that are normal. Easy there, Wolf Dog. That are normal, that you black and white every day without
Yeah.
thinking about it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's, you know, there's probably things that are like, that should be fairly black and white.
What, like
you
brush
should-
your teeth, right?
Yeah, brush your teeth. You should do something to move. You should try to eat a certain way.
Right.
You should try to eat at all.
Yeah.
You know, breathing's probably fairly important
That's
up
pretty
there.
black and white. Yeah.
Pretty black and white there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you were asking me a direct percentage, but I do think that most of your complex decisions and most of the decisions that are going to matter and going to make you have a better life and feel more fulfilled and happier, I think those are going to be the gray area.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dan. Yeah, and I was sort of setting you up for that one, right? Like, I didn't want to give you the answer I was looking for, but that was the answer I was looking for.
Well,
right?
I appreciate that softball pitch there.
So you know, following the playbook then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, I wonder who handed out the playbook on this one, Dan. Martial arts.
That's a whole nother.
Okay,
Sorry.
I know, right? So I'm going to throw a couple examples out there.
Okay.
Like martial arts studios, right? Like every town in America has a kung fu studio.
For
right?
sure, it does seem that way.
Okay,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
And until very recently, Eldersburg here, the little town of Eldersburg, right? It's not even a town. It's like
I'm not sure what we are.
Yeah, it's just a place in the county, right? And we've got I don't know, 7 or 8 karate gyms around the neighborhood. Like,
yeah, we do.
In a town this size, let's say there's 50,000 people that live around here, right?
All right.
You're not going to find more people that wake up suddenly one day and say, "Oh yeah, I just realized I want to study karate," or I want to take martial arts. I mean, it's
very specific.
It's a very fixed pool, right? That pool is not growing. So, you look at all the karate studios around here. You're thinking, man, that doesn't seem like a very smart idea to open up another karate school in this town, right? But they pop up, right? Mm-hmm. And then they go for a little bit, and then they fade away because the market doesn't support them.
Right.
But man, like who wrote the playbook on that? Who thought that was a good idea to open a karate studio? And then you think, oh man, are they opening another vape shop over there? What
we have double digits of those? It seems like.
I know. It's like who wrote the playbook?
We were talking about that the other day.
Like when I think about like following a playbook, or when I think about growth, right? Like, you're not going to grow the market for vape products in Eldersburg. It's just not going to happen, right?
But then
or is it?
I have no idea. So then is it one of those things where, so there's 2 avenues of thought here.
Yeah.
All right, and kind of goes into what we were talking about. So one would be, are you just starting a business for business sake and because you feel like you need a business, or are you starting it with something that you're passionate about? Where if you're starting a karate studio or maybe even a vape shop, maybe you're like, this is what I like, so I'm opening it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is commendable, even if you fail,
right,
according to our earlier conversation. From a market business standpoint,
right,
maybe not the greatest idea.
Right.
On the other side of things, if you were thinking about a business standpoint, if you're like, okay, I think that and I'm not trying to be whatever, but like there's a lot of gyms in the area, right? I think that, somebody could be like, oh, there's already a lot of gyms in the area, it's already saturated, Dan. I think that we do what we do the best, and I know that, the area supports, and this is what my people might be thinking, right?
Yeah.
So that the area might have 8 or 10 or whatever it is of what they want,
right?
But they're going to do it better than everybody else, and people already want it enough to have 8 or 10 that might be struggling, and then they might be able to have all that business,
right?
And still share some too.
Yeah, and that's and thanks again. I was sort of setting you up for that one too, right?
Dang, setting me up all over the place,
right?
Alex.
We talked about the company I work for, right? We don't want to be the biggest, we want to be the best, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to create market share, but we will take market share because people will say, I had this experience, for example, over here at this gym, and, I walked in the door and nobody greeted me, and nobody worked with me, and nobody helped me. I was just left to my own devices, right? And there's gyms like that, right?
Sure.
You walk in the door and, they've got classes you can sign up for, but you walk into some gyms like the one we're sitting in right now, and
this gym's trash.
This gym's awesome, man. This gym's awesome, right? Because when you walk in, it oozes sincerity, right?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and the people that like, if you walk in and you're already a customer, you're going to get greeted by name, right? And you're going to get a lot of individual attention, right? And people love that, right? I mean, some people want to go to a gym and they just get left alone, but some people
want to feel important.
Yeah. And okay, so that's important too, right? People want to feel important. And when you're starting over, you don't feel very important, right?
No, and I think maybe that's the struggle.
Okay. So producer Mike says 40 minutes in. We're 40
minutes in.
Right? So at some point, I'm going to get myself all talked out here. And instead of like ending on a positive note, we're just going to sort of fizzle and die because I'll fall out of the chair. Right?
I guess that's fair. You know what there is a lot of shops of in the area too? Really any area.
What's that?
Mechanic shops.
Yeah, okay. So Dan, can you recommend a decent mechanic?
I can. There's one that stands.
The market is fixed, right? You're not going to grow the market for mechanics.
Right.
So you want to find one that is the best. Do you know somebody like that?
I might know somebody like that. And I would say you want one that they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
Not going to make mistakes. They're going to treat you like a human being. They're not going to take advantage of you. They're very trustworthy.
Yeah.
And they're just amazing at what they do. And I'm going to say my friends at CNA Auto. You go talk to Adam. He owns it. He's a client here. Amazing guy, amazing company. And they're going to take amazing care of your automobile.
That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, in fact, I think I've seen Adam here, right here at Mad Lab Studios.
Doing chin-ups with weight plates attached to him.
Yeah, right here on the turf.
Yeah. No, he works hard.
Right. So Dan, like we can grow the market until it's saturated, and then it becomes a knife fight, right, to maintain market share.
I like that.
Or you can be the best at what you do, and you can and people just beat a path to your door, right? And I think with Adam and CNA Auto, I don't know if Adam wants to grow the business, but his business is awesome. I don't know what you want. Awesome. I don't know what your goals are to grow your business, but the business you have right now is awesome.
Thank you.
I don't know if it pays a living wage or not, but
I survive.
As a customer,
counts.
when I walk in the door, I feel like I'm getting my money's worth.
Well, I love to hear that. I love to hear that.
So, by the way, I'm doing a shameless plug here for Mad Lab Performance. I don't know if anybody understands that that's where we are right now. This is where I train. I think this is where Dan trains. It's an awesome place to go. And, bring your audacious, hairy goals into this place. Be unreasonable. Ask the world and expect to get it. And the people in Mad Lab, they'll do it for you. All right? They'll help you find a way. Okay?
Well, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, because we got to endorse. So Dan, I don't know. It feels like we're maybe wrapping up to a conclusion here.
Let's get a little summary.
Okay, right. That's a great idea. So I think we started with like, what does it feel like to start over, and is that even a good thing to do? Right. And a lot of people reach a certain point of success or maturity in their life, and they're like, I do not want to put up with the bullshit. I don't want to put up with the struggle. I don't want to go back to feeling like a baby or feeling like an idiot all over again. Right. I work too hard to not feel that way.
Right.
But if you want to do something great, if you want to be something different, if you want to move the needle a little bit, you kind of have to start over in some regards. Right?
And you're probably going to have to do it multiple times in your life.
Yeah. Realistically speaking, whether it's...
I think that expectation is important also helps.
Yeah. So there's the expectation that society lays on you. Like, you got to be beautiful, you got to be awesome, you got to be bigger, better, faster, stronger, richer. Yeah, I don't know what.
But in our society, we're going to say, expect to start over.
Yeah. Our society, the society of awesome.
That's right.
Right?
Expect to start over.
Yeah.
Expect to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's going to suck less every day that you do it.
Yeah.
Right? Until you start over again.
Yeah.
But it's the same process. You're already familiar with it. So then it just gets better. Be able to operate in the gray.
Yeah.
Right? What am I missing?
I don't know, Dan, but what I'm going to say in conclusion is that, just keep coming back here, because next week when we do this again, we'll suck a little less.
Alex, you're the man.
Dan, I'm just a man.